I love it when modern cognitive science and behavioral science backs up or affirms so much of what we've learned in the Getting Things Done GTD methodology for personal productivity about how to be effective. Partly, it's, as I say, validating. It's nice to hear that there is some rigorous science behind all of this, but also it sometimes helps me sort of take a deeper cut or another look at these principles that I've been teaching for the past 20 years. In his, I think, groundbreaking book, Tiny Habits, B.J. Fogg talks about the science of behavior change, ongoing behavior change, when you want to establish a new habit or routine that you're going to continue with for a long period of time. And what's interesting about this is that, by contrast, the Getting Things Done methodology very much focuses on discrete outcomes, things that you are going to accomplish usually in a certain timeline. But combining this behavioral approach with the focus on outcomes is really interesting to me because there's a lot of parallels, frankly. And in fact, a lot of the reasons that we get stuck, a lot of the reasons that things languish on your lists are very similar to the reasons that people often fall down in various programs or regimes on an ongoing basis to try and change their habits. So in this video, I want to talk about 5 key reasons that I've seen that people end up having things languish on their to-do lists or whatever kind of list that they're using, and how these mirror or map to some of the principles in Tiny Habits, how it marries up, and what it's taught us about what's effective at just basically a fundamental human level in terms of getting things unstuck, getting things going, and making positive change. So Fogg identified 3 key elements of ongoing behavior change. Those are specifically the ability to make the change, the motivation to make the change, and then some kind of prompt or trigger that effectively reminds you about the change you said you wanted to make. So the first area where I see people get stuck, as you might imagine, is in the area of next actions, those single, discrete, next step behaviors that we take. And of course, in the Getting Things Done methodology, we recommend that you get these listed out by context of where you'd actually do these things. And the 2 places where I see these starting to really get stuck, or the 2 reasons, let's say, that underlie these things basically being skipped over week on week or ignored or missed, such that in your weekly reviews, you kind of look at them and go, yeah, didn't do that again. Are, first of all, that the next action is not really easily visualized. And second, that it's not sort of bite-sized enough. So let's come on to that first one. Being able to visualize the next action when you read it is absolutely a key to minimizing the amount of time your brain needs to understand what needs to be done. So we talked in a previous video about the use of verbs, present tense active verbs, to help you understand this. Another way to do this is to think, if you were being filmed or if you were observing yourself doing this from the corner of a room somewhere, what would it look like? What would it look like? It's not, actually, it's not set up meeting. In fact, it's send an email to find some possible times. It's not actually sort out the plumbing. It's go online and research for that little coupler piece that you think you need and order that, and then it's a waiting for, and then it's something else. So getting really granular and discrete about this. The next part of this is really making it small enough and doable enough. Often, this is a part that people miss. They kind of look at it and go, well, my next action is to do all this stuff to move it forward. And actually, we say, break it down into something you'll do in one sitting, something that's bite-sized, something that's so within your ability to do, like send an email or make a phone call or whatever, that you almost have no excuse not to do it when you see it, right? It just motivates you to go, well, I know how to do that. Let me just take that next step. And these 2 things, the ability to visualize and the ability to make sure it's bite-sized enough there's almost no excuse not to do it, come into that area of ability that Fogg talks about, right? That you have the ability to enact this positive change. And again, this works just as well in terms of having the ability to enact a new long-term habit as it does in taking a single step toward a discrete outcome. So let's come on to those discrete outcomes. And specifically here, I'm talking about projects. Projects are discrete outcomes. They're the result of multiple steps to get somewhere, to have something be true that's not true yet in the world. And yet people very often don't state these in terms of what the finish line actually looks like. They state them more categorically. They state them more generally. They put a noun in there, like, client X. But what they're not really deciding is, am I done with this when I've sold this to client X? Am I done with this when it's been implemented for client X? Am I done with this when I've gathered the testimonials from client X about how well it went? What is the finish line? And you have to decide what done looks like, what it'll look like essentially when you tick this thing off. And stating it that way is the first step toward creating a sense of motivation and positive orientation toward this. But the second part of that, the reason why I often see people's projects get stuck, their desired outcomes get stuck, is that they're not stated in a motivational way. So I always state my successful outcomes. We had a great coaching session. They got everything they wanted out of it. And literally that's the name of the project, not coaching XYZ. So one way to look at this is to look at the potential positive or negative consequences, right? I'm filing my taxes because I don't want to get audited or fined. But as much as possible, inspiration tends to work a lot better than fear or negative forms of motivation, at least in my experience. So as much as you can state that in terms of the desired outcome and even punch it up a little bit, right? If you're looking at something and week on week, you just go, I'm not motivated to take the next step on this thing. See if you can punch it up a bit. See if you can find a way to make that seem more meaningful and significant, to cross that very much discrete, crossable finish line, that get to achieve that outcome, to make that thing true. And this is a lot of the way that we start to get procrastination unstuck. And again, of course, this maps straight to the motivation part of this model, right? That motivation is just as important for long-term behavior change as it is for the discrete outcomes. And there's a third aspect to this that I think is particularly interesting, though, and relevant to GTD as well. So let's talk about that. The third element is the prompt or trigger, right? And here, what's most interesting is that just as with the best intentions to establish a new habit, you also need good habits to be able to enact positive change in a GTD system or GTD model. And one of the best ways to do that is to chain or to link different existing behaviors with new ones that you want to bring about. So one of the big problems I see with people getting stuff stuck on their lists is they're just not looking at the lists. It's really that simple. It comes down to a fundamental kind of basic human dynamic of, are you doing it or not? And so what I often tell people is find a way, find an existing behavior. It could be with your first cup of morning coffee. As soon as you taste that cup of coffee, that's your prompt, that's your trigger to then go into your list and to just briefly scan your action list for those contexts where you'll be that day to get a sense of what your options might be. It may be that you're an email addict, and so instead of following that impulse to open your email, you instead open your task list first. It sounds really simple. In fact, some people even configure their systems like Outlook to open the tasks before the email, right? So that they can get in there and have a chance before getting sort of sucked into email. So both for mitigating kind of negative habits and for promoting positive habits, having just this moment of pause or reflection because behavior A is triggering you to consider the option of enacting behavior B can be incredibly powerful. In fact, it can be in some ways more powerful than motivation, right? Not as powerful as ability, right? You have to have the ability to do something, but sometimes the most motivated people, just for simple lack of it coming to their awareness in a way that they recognize on a daily basis, miss these things. So that third thing is really, really critical, that trigger or that prompt. We sort of live and die by our day-to-day habits and behaviors. And when it comes to the GTD model, it's absolutely essential that you not only capture, clarify, and organize all of these things into good lists and into good calendar items, but that you review them regularly. So if there's anything, I think that particularly from a mechanical standpoint, can hold people up, can cause things to be stuck on their lists, it can be this simple thing of, are you looking at them? If not, why not? And what can you do about it to make sure that you are engaging with them at least once a day, no matter what? Human behavioral dynamics kind of level the playing field in a way. And I think this is fun and kind of funny because no matter how smart you are, you do dumb things. We all do kind of dumb things. But understanding why we fall into these traps of doing dumb things is a great way to use your brain to support your brain and to support your future self. GTD provides this wonderful roadmap out of these traps, out of this suboptimal behavior and into much more productive behavior, not by ignoring or minimizing or trying to hide the fact that sometimes who we are is someone that does dumb things, but actively confronting that future self that may potentially need some support and help, that may potentially need a prompt, that may need next actions that are more clear and discrete and obvious how they're doable, that may need project outcomes that feel desirable and interesting and motivational. So by kind of souping things up, by just cranking it up a little bit so that that future self has an option to behave more intelligently, to pause for a moment and say, look, you know what, actually, I'm going to look at my lists before I just dive into email because I know I'm going to get lost in there. I know me, I know my bad habits, and I'm going to make a different choice. It can be hugely powerful in not only adopting GTD, but in long term, both achieving those kind of discrete outcomes and making positive change to your habits overall. Habits and the adoption of a GTD methodology kind of go hand in hand, which is why I think this is so interesting that these two areas mirror each other so much. You can learn a lot more about the Getting Things Done methodology and get support through one-to-one coaching or through coming along to one of our seminars. Check out next-action.co.uk for information if that's at all interesting to you about how you can take your practice to the next level. And whatever you choose to do next, I highly recommend you hit the subscribe button to get more of this kind of thinking from me and from my colleagues who are constantly really looking at and working on how do we continue to reach people? How do we kind of continue to map this to modern times, to the current landscape, to the evolving thinking about how to live more satisfying, productive, happy lives? Whatever the case, I hope you found something here that will help you be just a tiny bit more happy and successful in what you do. And I'll see you next time.